Welcome back to another episode of the Healthy with Heartland podcast. My name is Justin Freistadt. I am your host, joined, of course, with your favorite creative directors, Simon and Shannon. How are we doing?
Good morning.
Another healthy day with Heartland. Glad to be here.
Sure
it's raining,
is.
but we're going to go anyway.
It is raining. We are going to talk about current events as we do every week and some other topics today. But there's a lot to talk about in the food world, inflation, the impact of your supply chains. That'll be a common theme here probably for the next few months. But before we get into those topics, let's send it over to Simon and Shannon for some announcements.
All right. Welcome back, Heartland family. I can help you out with your reorder special this month. So if you are ready to reorder, definitely let us know. Only a couple more days left to take advantage of our March reorder special, which is our smoked honey glazed spiral ham. It's one of our Heartland family favorites. So definitely make sure to get on the schedule for that before the end of the month. Also, another quick announcement. I'm sure you've seen our expert delivery team out there getting your freezers restocked for your reorders. So we're actually doing a driver appreciation contest where you can involve them and you guys can both win a little something. So we have an extra special gift for you, $500 cash to our lucky winner. And we'll do an awesome vote in the foodies group on everyone's favorite photo. So definitely make sure to mention them in your freezer posts or post a photo of them in those freezer posts. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and get into the podcast.
All right. So, Justin, you posted this article that basically outlined fertilizer prices and how they're going up. I just wanted to kind of, have you kind of share some insight on, basically what you found out.
Well, it's actually, it's not hilarious, but it's kind of hilarious. The perfect storm of energy and commodities and how all of this stuff is produced and comes from that Ukraine-Russia area and how much that impacts the global supply chain. So it's almost like if you wanted to make inflation worse, which we already have inflation, you would create a conflict right there. So it's kind of incredible to see it happening. And Russia and Ukraine are among the most important producers of agricultural commodities in the world. So the global supply chain relies on it. They produce a bunch of the fertilizers. Now, here's something really funny. I'm going to read this from the article, too. Prices for raw materials that constitute the fertilizer market, ammonia, nitrogen, nitrates, phosphates, potash, and sulfates, up 30% since the turn of the year. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, why do I want any of that stuff in my food anyways?
Right. Yeah.
Interesting enough, yeah.
As I was reading through the article, that was kind of like my question. And it's almost like, is it the time where now people are going to start, because of price in general, just going to a more regenerative source because they're not having to use the fertilizers and the chemicals because of the way that they're farming.
Right.
So I feel like, maybe it's now the time that, most consumers are really going to look into, things without fertilizers, things without these phosphates and all these chemicals because those are the things leaching into our food in general in the first place anyway. But now you have that second aspect of it's even more expensive because of all these things that are going on.
Yeah, the rising cost of, the commodity. It's like, well, if you're going to spend the money either way, I'd rather have, my food fed on a pasture.
Right.
If all chicken's going to be $5.99 a pound, I would rather have mine raised the right way.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible because people will ask me every day, how are you impacted by supply chains? Food cost is going up, and we're not impacted by it because our farmers don't use inputs and synthetically create their food. So that you're seeing the impact of how the global supply chain, the inputs that are needed for conventional agriculture are increasing the costs. Now, what is increasing the cost for everybody is fuel.
Exactly, yeah.
Oil goes up, the cost of diesel's through the roof. That is what every tractor, all the transportation, everything runs off of that diesel. So no matter how you cultivate your food, that's going to have an impact. So even though it does impact us, the smaller supply chains going from farms that are closer and not traveling all around the world, we're having much less of an impact than what you're seeing in the stores. And as this thing gets compounded down the supply chain, we are going to raise prices. It's coming here at Heartland Foods. They're working on it right now. So if you don't have a price lock and you're not a member, do it because it's going to be at least 5 to 7% higher, if I had to guess, in the next few months. But that's nothing compared to what you're going to see in the commercial supply chain. So you're already looking at 20+% year over year food costs in the stores, and it's probably going to be at least that, if not double. as things get kicked down the road here in the next 30, 90 days.
Wow.
Which is crazy because, again, if you're thinking about price, now is the best time to do it because obviously we, as Heartland Foods, you kind of held out as far and as long as we could, really. You know what I mean? Everyone's going to get hit by it. I think you're seeing it everywhere in every industry. Yeah. But I think it is time to start paying attention to, like you said, Justin, the supply chains and where you are getting your food. And yeah, I mean, you're going to have to still go back to the grocery store for certain things because, a farm doesn't sell everything. But if you can align yourself with a company like ours or go out to these regenerative sources and these farms and actually, buy the real food, buy the stuff that's not having to use these fertilizers and these chemicals, you're going to feel better. It's going to taste better. Mm-hmm. And then it's the same price, right?
Well, yeah. And then you're supporting,
at this point,
you're supporting people who are doing things like the right way. And then essentially that, trickles down to regenerating the land and the soil. And so not only are you contributing to your own personal health and your family's health, right, but also the health of the environment.
Absolutely. So. And what's better than that, right?
Yeah, just to give people a little picture, like I'm sitting here looking at the commodities this morning. Oats, $712 for the May futures. It was $350 a year ago. So that's a double. That's a 100% increase. Corn, everything runs off corn in this country, including your gasoline. They refine corn for ethanol. Less than a year ago, corn futures were under $500, around $400. Today it's at $750. So we're looking at doubles across all the commodity space. We did see a pullback, a temporary pullback in wheat. It's back over $1,000 for the futures in May. And that was $600 less than a year ago. So it's going to roll. What people don't seem to understand, you see it in gas first because it impacts the cost of your fuel immediately. When the cost of these things go into other things, like food, it gets cultivated, it gets transported, it takes a while, and then the consumers have to deal with that cost after people run out of their inventories. So that's what's going to happen is previously purchased inventory is getting sold right now. Yeah. And once that's done being sold and the new products come in at these double elevated costs, what's the end selling store going to do? They're going to be forced to raise the prices. I mean, there's just no way around it.
Yep. Wow. They're going to have to build that cost into the actual price, that the consumer is going to pay. I mean, and the people that are going to get hit the hardest are the consumers because, I mean, when you think about it, though, what is a business to do? Yeah. Right? Like, what can they do? Like, if all of these prices are going up, it's not that they're just raising prices, it's that everything is inflated.
Yeah, they're incurring all those costs. And so it's like we always talk about how that translates then again to the, the consumer. And then here we're lucky because we don't have as, many of those things like the middlemen, in between. We come directly from the farm, to your freezer essentially. So, yeah. I
got one more for you. So, corn and soybeans are what's primarily the feed for agriculture. For meats, chickens, I mean, that's what they eat. All-time high for soybeans this morning at 1710. It was under 1,000 a year ago, less than a year ago. So this is wild. I mean, I've never seen any type of blow off top inflation in commodities like this. So, yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, like you said, so the feed goes up, so the product, essentially that the farmer is even growing is going to have to go up. So it's not that, this regenerative farming is not going to become inflated. And, same thing with ours. Like eventually, because like you said, Justin, as everything gets sold off.
Everything. I mean, the feed goes up, the transportation.
All of it, yeah.
The bedding. I mean, you got to think about, working farm or a ranch. Like they have, things they got to upkeep. It's just a lot that goes into it.
And it's so unfortunate, too, because you think we just went through COVID.
And we're kind of feeling like we're coming out of it, but then we're kind of being hit with this from all sides as well.
Yeah.
Well, now we're just dealing with the consequences of when you shut down a global economy. It takes some time to ripple through, and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. Right. And then at the end of the article, it says that I guess a U.S. recession is unlikely because of what's going on, and I guess we're looked at as like we're in a stronger economic position because of this right now at this point. But I mean, I feel like as far as, the prices going up and all those kind of things, I feel like, we already almost feel like we're in a recession kind of, right?
Strain enough in itself.
I mean, inflation is the ultimate tax, on the average person. You don't have to raise taxes to tax people. If your dollars don't go as far, you're being taxed through inflation. So,
Right.
It depends who you listen to. A lot of people are saying the odds of a recession are very high. It's just hard to trust what comes out of the Federal Reserve. They said inflation was transitory. It wasn't, right? They keep saying like a recession is unlikely, but with elevated asset prices the way they are, and I saw the 30-year mortgage went to 4.5%.
Like, that's crazy.
It's
Oh man, you think
probably
about it
going
before.
higher.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's
Recession
crazy.
in housing. I mean, I don't know. It's just hard to say, but you typically whatever the mainstream's saying isn't going to happen, it's kind of going to happen. So I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, that's scary to think about.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. The
Well,
mainstream
and then in
media.
two, like you're talking about, the rise in these commodities, and this is just since last year, so this is just over a year, right? Imagine as time kind of goes on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So when you look at the price of soybeans this morning in the last week, nobody's buying soybeans at that price yet
Right.
because they have an inventory of said soybeans.
Right.
So in 30 days or 60 days, however long they have inventory, and they go to buy soybeans again, it's going to cost a lot more, and they're going to go, well, we have no choice but to raise the cost of the chicken we produce that
Right.
eats soybeans. And it's like, it's going to take time. And everyone's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Well, it will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I
'cause you're
guess
not feeling it yet.
That's subjective. Yeah, exactly. How long are those reserves, right? And then too, what's scary is like, does it keep going up, right? Because when does it stop? Or I guess like when can it, or does it have the ability to reverse itself? Or when it start undoing itself? Like, I don't know. I have no idea.
I feel like we're at the beginning of this, whole ordeal. So it's like, like I said, it's super unfortunate. And right now, being at the beginning, I don't even think you can see an end.
Right.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
and two, we always mention it, but like the second highest cost for families is food is what you're eating, and you have to eat. You can't not eat. So it's your mortgage and your food. And so to secure, that cost at least,
Think
make
about
you
that.
feel
You said
better.
secure. Like, think about the
That's
people
how I
that
feel like
that
what
don't
Heartland
have it
does.
secure.
It secures. You're secure with your food supply.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about what your family's going to eat, and you know the quality. Plus, with the wellness consultants being able to build your family your own customized menu, you can have it fit, your personalized budget, and you can plan ahead. And with the price lock, you don't have to worry about your prices being raised. So there's actually there's many layers of it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It all sounds great, but then you think about the other side of people who probably, they don't know about our service, don't have a service like this, and they're going to get hit at a certain point with going to if they haven't already, go to the grocery store, look at the things on the shelves, and be like, am I, even if they're not buying organic, let's say you're not buying organic at this point, and you go in and you buy something, a regular commodity, chicken, steak, anything like that, and that price is already elevated,
right?
And soon it's going to get even more elevated, and you're just, it's going to be pretty scary when you talk about it if you're not secure within the supply chains that we have.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many things, right? It's like you're driving to the store, that costs something, There's like all these costs, and everybody's always asking, they're like, well, am I going to save money with Heartland Foods? And it's like, well, that's up to you, but we know what it costs to go out to dinner, right? You spend $100, even a small family, you're spending $100 if you're going out to dinner, and you do that one less time a week. I can build you a plan for $100 a week. So it's really just a commitment to a different lifestyle. So if you're feeling the squeeze and you commit to cook 1 or 2 extra days at home, I just took care of your entire food costs on its own, just by a little shift in lifestyle. So, things will cost what you want them to cost in life. You have more control over what you spend than you think.
Right. And Justin, you're being, you're kind of on the low end too. $100 for a small family. We're a family of 2, and
yeah, we're spending way more than that.
Yeah, you can't go anywhere without spending at least, $100. Of course, fast food. I'm not taking that into consideration, but
yeah.
Well,
a family of fast food.
Yeah,
we've talked about
even
that
that.
before. $40, $50, $60.
now,
Right?
Yeah.
And they don't give you any groceries.
Exactly.
True. And maybe they're not delivering it either. There's
That's
definitely a huge difference there.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And I think
That's
yeah. So I guess the kind of transition. If people have questions, on these kind of topics and these kind of things, one thing I think that we all have in common is we love to research and sort of dive into, these subjects as far as like nutrition and food and just, like sourcing, all those kind of things, Justin. So I know we wanted to talk about some of the books, essentially that you find super important and beneficial.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind, sharing those.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The books that I've come to think are important have kind of evolved, and now more than ever, especially with being down at Miami last weekend, I got to see Gary Brecka speak, and he's incredible. And learning a lot of the science of just how everything really is tied to our gut health.
Mm-hmm.
That's really priority number one, is restoring your gut to a healthy place. Because even if you start eating healthy food and you don't get the results, it's probably because your gut microbiome is so damaged you can't even absorb the nutrients.
Yeah.
So starting with gut health, getting lectin proteins out of your life, things that blow holes in your gut wall and kill your gut microbiome. So great book for that is The Plant Paradox by Dr. Gundry. That's how I got introduced to the concept of lectin proteins. And basically what it is, it's things like plants have natural defense mechanisms against predators in nature, because not all plants and fruits want to be eaten. It's kind of weird, but nature has a way of telling a predator when it eats it, don't eat me. And that would be a peanut having a shell to protect the peanut on the inside, right?
Yep.
So why do we have so many peanut allergies in this country? Because really shouldn't eat peanuts. They don't want to be eaten. Whereas a fruit has seeds and it wants to pass its seeds on. So it wants to be eaten, right? So that the animal will eat the seed and then spread it and it fertilizes, right? Because it doesn't know that like we have modern society and we use toilets, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
nature has a way of passing things on and trying to not pass things on. So eating things that don't have lectin protein, staying away from beans. Beans have a high lectin protein.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's like, oh, beans make me fart. No, beans are destroying your gut microbiome. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
That is why you're farting.
They talk about it's an allergic
No, for real,
reaction. Yeah,
because
your body can't process it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it's funny, but at the same time, you know what I mean? If you think about it, you're eating those beans and it's tearing up your gut.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we always talk about how, important the gut is too. And it's interesting that you brought up Dr. Gundry, because he just actually came out with a new book, which is specifically talking about just like keto and the low carb diet and stuff, but it's called Unlocking the Keto Code. And he just came on the podcast. What's the
Impact Theory?
Yeah, Impact Theory, and talked a little bit about it, which was interesting too. And he has really great insight into specifically like the gut and the brain and how food is reacting with both.
Yep.
Yeah, the number one thing to eliminate in terms of lectin proteins is anything wheat.
Wheat. Mm-hmm.
Anything wheat. It's very high lectin protein content in the outside of the wheat, the husk. And this whole thing about whole grains are healthy and how that was sold to us is because the whole grain industry figured out that it was very cost effective to not process the plant down to a white product. And all the lectin proteins are on the outside of that husk, which is where the wheat is. And it does have vitamins and minerals in it, so they could sell it as, heart healthy whole grains. But really, it's a cheaper way to produce the same commodity, and it's loaded with lectin proteins. And that's why we're having all these people that are developing celiac, gluten-free. Like, it doesn't matter if you're celiac. Wheat is terrible for your gut.
Yeah.
Just eliminate it. If you're going to have pasta, white. And people, like, their brains just explode. What do you mean don't eat brown rice? You can get white rice.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, I'm not eating that for the minerals and the stuff anyways. I'm eating that for carb delivery.
Right.
And I get my vitamins and minerals from other sources. So if I can eliminate all the lectin proteins that are going to wreak havoc on my gut, it's pretty much a no-brainer decision to do the white instead of the brown.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And then if you can't, and you're not going to, get rid of all lectins, they say that I think cooking it in a pressure cooker, doesn't that eliminate? I mean, probably not all of them.
Helps to break it down.
Most of them.
It does with certain things. It does with the beans. It doesn't for wheat.
Okay. So not with the wheat.
Okay. I also know too, like, I don't know anything about it, but I know like a lot of people soak beans and stuff in like dairy or like in raw milk to help eliminate certain things. I don't know what it's eliminating, but I heard that.
No, that they also said that beans, think about this. If you eat beans raw, I think it's like 4 or 10 of them. Mm-hmm. It's potentially fatal.
No,
or
it's
it is
cashews.
fatal. Same thing.
Raw cashews.
Oh no,
Cashews
I
and
think
beans.
uncooked beans. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
That's
know
what I'm
that.
trying to tell you. Cashews
Oh,
and
wow.
beans.
Well, I knew a
Uncooked-
handful of raw cashews can kill you. I knew that.
And same thing with beans.
Interesting.
So if you think about that,
that makes sense. Let's eat those.
like what?
Very
Yeah.
interesting.
So
Yeah, I mean, there's and too, like, I feel like a lot of people, and I mean, whether, you're plant-based or not, but like, a lot of people like eat beans to get extra protein, but you can get all the protein, amino acids and things that you need from animal protein without, having to add in, that extra.
that's a topic for discussion too, because I feel like there's so many different ways and books, and I mean, we've only mentioned one so far, but there's so many different books. How do you, and this is for everybody, like how do you actually figure out, like what it is that you actually believe? Because there's a book that'll be like, oh, eating this way is the best thing, and there's research that shows this, and then they'll say, oh no, this way is the best way. How do you guys figure out, what's real?
Well, the first thing I did was I went and got my master's in CS. You know what that is?
No.
Common sense.
There you go.
No, but I think through, first of all, it's read, receive information, verify, test, and then common sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
If everybody's getting gut issues from wheat and all these things, and glyphosate that's in the food that's killing your gut microbiome, which is going to be on the outside of these plants because they spray it. Another reason not to have wheat.
Right.
It's like connecting the dots and then saying, okay, well, if this is making everyone sick, maybe I should believe what's in the book, right? And then read a ton of books, right? Stuff that you don't agree with and things you do agree with. And that's how you can formulate what works, test it on yourself. That's why I changed my stance on fruit. I used to say, no fruit, it's just sugar, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't eat it. Now I'm eating a ton of fruit. And the results of my last body transformation were incredible. I mean, I just went from a no lectin protein-based diet, lots of fruit. Also, the Fit for Life book by Harvey Diamond said the same thing. Eat a lot of fruit in the morning, because when you go to sleep, you have the elimination period starting where your digestive system stops working and it gets a rest. And then when you wake up in the morning, like, that's why your breath smells, because you're basically eliminating and burning. And if you have just fruit, it doesn't stop the elimination period. So
Interesting.
yeah, because it's not heavy. Your body doesn't have to process. It's just, light sugars, natural sugars, and fiber and all this good stuff. So I started doing that, eating a lot of fruit in the morning, and I feel amazing. And you got to test these things on yourself and see what works for you.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Justin, which fruit, are you eating?
All dark berries. So that's the other
berries.
thing, right? There's nuance to this. It doesn't mean you can just get a ton of pineapples and mangoes and apples and just, have 100 grams of sugar before 9 a.m. I mean,
Right.
I'm eating probably a half a cup of blueberries, half a cup of strawberries and blackberries, right? So a cup and a half of fruit,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good.
which seems crazy, but like when you put it in the chronometer and I look at the caloric impact of that, it's very low.
Yeah.
That makes sense too. And for some reason, I don't know why, but this book by Mark Hyman, Food, What the Heck Should I Eat? It just wants to stay on the screen and it won't come off. So it's just going to be there. It's just going to stay there for a little while until it comes off. But that's another interesting one if you want to talk a little bit about people being confused about what diet to follow and, what should I eat? What shouldn't I eat? What's good for me? What's bad for me? But I wanted to touch on the topic of like the fruit because too, we started doing this like metabolic measure called Lumen, where like you can measure your breath and it'll measure how much CO2 is in your breath. Basically, it'll tell you if your body is burning carbohydrates versus like ketones, so fat versus carbs. And what it says a lot, it gives you like recommendations when you do it in the morning. It tells you kind of what you're burning, and it'll recommend to always eat carbs, and it always recommends fruit in the morning. And it says to eat that because then your body can kind of get on that train of burning the carbohydrates off. Mm-hmm. And what it's hoping is that as you go into the evening, your body will kind of shift into fat burning mode. And that's kind of like this cycle that it'll continue to go through to keep your metabolic, I guess your body's metabolic rate, even.
Yep.
So.
And I think it's pretty important that, Justin, that you mentioned the fruit that you were eating, because I think most people, when they go to their mind, they're like, oh, yeah, I could just eat fruit in the morning. I'll just have, like you said, some mangoes and some pineapples, and I'll just have all these good, really sweet-tasting fruit and think that...
A banana.
Yeah, exactly. That all these things are going to be good for me, where I feel like not all food is created equal, right? So
Yeah.
your berries are probably top of the food chain when it comes to your fruits and things like that. So I just wanted to make sure, we identified that so that if people did have any questions, you know what I mean, that's something. And
Yeah.
I always like having fruit, especially at this time of the year because they're almost in season. So especially in the summer and those times, like fruits, berries, all those kind of things are so good and they're delicious.
For whatever
And
reason.
low in sugar.
Yeah, like I get so hungry. The second I wake up, hungry. Now it's like have a cup of fruit and maybe an Icelandic yogurt with it. And what time is it? 10 o'clock right now? I have zero hunger right now. I could probably cruise till noon, 1 o'clock before I eat real satiating solid food, which is going to be, I do it every day. 3 full cups of white basmati rice and a pound of meat.
Boom.
That's what I
There
eat.
you go.
It's delicious.
And I got down to
Simple.
single-digit body fat doing that. So it's not the carbs that are hurting you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's your lack of muscle mass and your low metabolic rate that's perpetuating your fat storage.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah.
And lifestyle.
And as I say, lifestyle too. Lifestyle can be a huge thing. You could be eating all the right stuff, doing all the research. I would say measuring your macros, but if you're following your macros, it's kind of hard to mess that up.
Well, you could be measuring your macros and then
You could be
not
measuring.
exercising.
You could be measuring it improperly, or there's a bunch of things.
Not getting
but
good sleep.
Yeah,
I
all
mean,
those
eating-
things count.
You could be like eating right before you, right before you go to sleep, and your macros would be right, but still, how's that affecting your body?
True digestion.
Huge. All good stuff. So Shen, you mentioned the Mark Hyman food. What the heck should I eat? That's
Yep.
one that I read, but it's just it kind of goes into not what you should eat, but it makes it really simple to kind of identify. So he goes into like if you're going to eat meat, make sure you're getting the pasture raised stuff, make sure you're getting the wild caught salmons if you can afford it.
Yep.
And then
Just talks a little bit too about like how people's perspective around like how fat is bad for you, but if you're having high quality or good quality fats, how that's good for you, and can help you maintain actually like a better homeostasis for your body. And then too, he gives recommendations. And what I kind of wanted to talk about too is a lot of times if you do find a book, like there's Primal Blueprint by Mark Sisson, who does like all the Primal Kitchen products and things like that. There's just like a lot of different books. And if you find one that really resonates with you, or you feel like that would be sustainable for you, or you like some of those aspects, a lot of them, and I wish I could pull it up on the screen, a lot of them have cookbooks as well. So there's like a food, what the heck should I eat cookbook? And there's a Primal Blueprint cookbook, and there's a carnivore cookbook, and there's a paleo cookbook. So there's lots of like, especially if you resonate with the specific people and they're doing things like kind of the way that you feel like you would want to do them. That's one thing that I found helpful as well. Yeah.
For me, it's always just been, how do you feel? So I read these things and then it's like, okay, so I'll have like the book with Dr. Mark Hyman or any of these things. It's just like you want to incorporate some of these things, see how you feel, and if you feel good eating it, and you've taken out, because that's what we talked about it before. That's what I feel is so important about one of these kind of like restrictive diets. It's like you go down, you take everything out, you see how you feel, and then you start to add those things back in, and then you start to see how you feel when you add those things back in. Because a lot of it is really about feeling. So some people could process certain things, some people can't. But as far as like with the lectins and things, like I think it's just a matter of time before it catches up to you either way. So if you are eating those things, like pretty soon your gut microbiome and your gut wall, all of those things are going to be affected, and then it's going to take time to have to rebuild those things
and heal them. Yeah.
And then you think about the quality of the food. If you're not eating the right quality of food as well, you're going to have those hormones and those extra chemicals and the glyphosate and all those things in that food that then is just going to contribute to, just worse things down the line. So that was one good one. Justin, do you have another?
I just want to say that we just came up with the topic for this Monday's Top Tier Mastermind. We're going to do books.
Nice. That's a good one. That's a really good one.
I'll be at home. We can bring them out.
Yeah, as I say, I have a lot more.
Yeah, we'll go over books. Yeah. From an environmental toxin standpoint, I think everybody should read Countdown.
Okay.
Countdown.
It's, get the audio book. It's a tough one. It's very technical, research-based, but Shanna Swan, she wrote the book, and it's basically, the reason why it's called Countdown is because it's basically how we become extinct as a species because of environmental toxins.
Wow. That's intense.
Yeah. Especially now.
And the evidence is very clear in hormonal changes. You can kind of see it in society, things that are happening, but the they have all kinds of research, journaled scientific data that proves the length of the taint is shrinking, male sex organs are shrinking, miscarriages are increasing. There's all these things that are happening from our exposure to phthalates, BPA, glyphosate, just the overall toxic load. I mean, if you look at the cancer rates, 1 in 800 people would get cancer 100 years ago. Now it's 1 in 2.
That just gave me the chills. That's crazy. Yeah. Your water, your air, your food, everything.
Yeah. But the estrogenic effect of microplastics specifically is potentially going to get bad enough in humans that we won't be able to reproduce. That's basically her hypothesis of how society goes extinct through and exposure to environmental toxins. Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. I mean, it just, like we're essentially killing ourselves off. Not a meteor, like, dinosaurs, that kind of thing. It would just be us, just the decisions that we're making because we wanted things cheaper, fatter, faster, stronger. You know what I mean? Like quicker, all those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Corporate greed,
Yeah. It's interesting.
Well, I am ready to dive more into the topic of books this upcoming Monday. So appreciate everyone joining with us. We've been kind of chatting away here for a minute, but I think now it's probably a good time to wrap things up, and we're going to be back again next Thursday, so definitely check that out. If you guys have any topics or comments, post them down below so that we can cover those or answer any of your questions. And with that,
I just have one question before we go. So the books part, is it going to be like nutritional books or any kind of books?
Like that's a great question.
Maybe we'll figure it out. We'll let everybody know.
Yeah, I'm gonna do nutrition. Because if we're gonna, we should have a separate episode when it comes to investing or personal development.
Yeah.
Okay.
But let's keep it just health and wellness books for the first one, because we'll end up being on there for 3 hours if we open it up to all topics. But so if you're not in the group, it is a private group. Just send me a DM. I'll invite you to the group. It's free. You can show up when you want to. It's not required. You don't have to have your camera on if you just want to hang out and listen and soak up information. If you want to participate, that's great. It's a great collaborative environment. We do it every Monday night, 8 p.m. on Zoom. If you don't want to attend, but you want to watch the replays, go to toptierhuman.com and just get Top Tier Health. If you join the mastermind, there's a coupon code in there in the Facebook group to get 50% off the access to the course. So
you heard it here first.
Awesome. And we'll also post the link to the mastermind in the description of this post too. If you want to get signed up, we'll send you the Zoom link for this upcoming Monday's meeting.
Sounds good.
All right.
Let's wrap it up. So we'll be back next week. And as always, stay healthy with Heartland.